We love South.
Hello and welcome everybody to a quick video here to explain some MAPs and Acadience reports that are going home today prior to parent-teacher conferences. So if you kind of follow along with me with the reports that you have of your child, hopefully I can interpret this for you well enough that when you do come in for conferences, if you have questions over this, they can be taken care of fairly quickly. And the majority of the time can be spent talking about your child, which is kind of what parent-teacher conferences is for, not going over some of these reports. So I'm looking at first this student progress report here, and this is a MAP growth report. And you're going to see all of these graphs on here. So I'm going to just very quickly explain what these are for. Down below we have the years that and the time that test was taken. So FA stands for fall of 20. This would be winter 21, spring of 21, fall of 21, and you can kind of see the scores there. The student score here, your student's score, is actually going to be in this blue graph, and then our norm grade level mean RIT is going to be here. So this would be kind of like the average, if you want to think of it that way. So looking at this graph, you can kind of see where that student is at according to the average. Now you're going to also see this graph over here. This is going to be their projected score for the winter. So when we take this again, which we will take it in January, the MAP is projecting their score to be around here. That's the growth that they're expected to see from this fall score to this winter score. Okay. You can also take a look at over here. It has it even broken down even more, and it'll actually give you the percentile range. So if you remember from curriculum night, if you were there, this test is a nationally normed test, and so this percentile is not in Sydney, but it's actually across the nation. So by looking at these scores, you can kind of see where that percentile is at. So looking at fall of 21, this student would be in the 68th percentile according to their scores that they did in math. Reading is exactly the same way. So that's our first graph. Okay, let's move on. Let's talk about the family reports here. Now, the family report has a couple of things that are really important down here because it has to do with more than just the scores. It has more to do with their growth. Okay, so this is an important thing to see, especially if your student is scoring maybe a little bit lower. Growth is where you can kind of check out, see where they're at. And so this is kind of the scores. Again, they're trending, okay, trending up, which is good. And then you can see the actual growth here. This student was in the 51st percentile in average growth, which means that they're gaining about what is to be expected. So seeing students that are over here in this green and this blue means that they're high achieving, they're getting a lot of growth. So their scores might be lower in percentiles, but their growth is huge. And here at school, that's important for us because if we're growing big, that means we're catching up or we're making those gains. So that's what we want to see. Students who are at kind of the top end of the range might be a little lower in growth because their ceiling is a lot closer than a student who's in that lower percentile. So kind of keeping those things in mind, they kind of go hand in hand. All right, so growth is the amount of improvement they've made from one test to the next, and then their percentile is just where they rank with their current scores. So you can see this is the 68th percentile, but the student was at the 51st in growth. So that is MAPs. Let's switch gears now. We're going to talk about Acadience. So this would be what used to be called Dibbles. Now it's called Acadience. We have several tests that we score here. This one happens to be a first grade sample here, so some of the second grade might look slightly different, but let's just quickly talk about what each of these are. Phonemic awareness is just like it says, understanding that spoken words are made up of individual sounds. And so there's going to be a dark line here. That is going to be what's called the benchmark. So if you kind of think back to MAPs gave us that kind of 50th percentile-ish. Benchmark is kind of that same area. This is where we would expect our students to be at a minimum. So this student is a little bit above that. So scores above the benchmark, doing great. If we're below, that's when we're taking a look at some different things, maybe interventions, maybe some sort of a read plan, that sort of thing. So taking a look at that, that's kind of what that means. We're going to move on a little bit here. Phonics, these are the phonics tests that we have. Nonsense word fluency, correct letter sounds, and nonsense word fluency, whole words read. So this is just knowing that sounds the sounds of the letters and the blending sounds together in written words. So kind of knowing that these sounds come together to form words. Now, these are nonsense words, so they're not real words, so you can't just sight read this stuff. You have to actually know the sounds and be able to decode them. This skill is a very important skill, and as our first graders moving into second grade and our emerging readers in second grade continue, you'll notice that this nonsense word fluency score will continue to bump up and up and up. Okay, that leads into the next test here, which is that oral reading fluency. This is real words for a real story, and can you put it all together to then read fluently? Okay, so in first grade, we do not test oral reading fluency in the fall. That will be tested later on, though, in the winter and also in the spring. So in the fall, you'll see just an empty graph. Second grade, this is tested the entire time. Oral reading fluency is, like I said, reading stories and other written materials easily and quickly with few mistakes. And so you'll have two graphs here. You'll have words correct, and then you'll also have an accuracy. We want that accuracy to be up very, very high, and we want our words read to be around that benchmark area or higher as well too. Okay. Now, in first grade only, you're going to see this reading composite score. Okay, this composite score is kind of a compilation of all the scores that they have done. There'll be a benchmark goal for you, and then you'll see the overall score here. So bumping back a couple of tests here, you can see that these scores here were slightly below that benchmark. This score was above the benchmark, so when we compile all those into the composite score, we're a little below that benchmark area. Now, one thing to keep in mind, this is nothing to be concerned about right at this moment in time. This was done at the very beginning of the year. We have a full year set up of their of reading of our curriculum to kind of boost their scores. We look at these scores all the time. If a student has not benchmarked, we will probably be doing progress monitors for that student so that we're keeping track and making sure that they are going to meet their goals. So, keep that in mind. You can always help out at home by just reading to students, reading to kids, just out loud, you reading them helping you read. Those are all great ways to help out at home. So your teacher will talk a lot more about all that stuff during conferences. Hopefully this helps you kind of guide your way through the reports. If you do have some questions regarding any of the scores that were given, or if you would like some extra help on that, definitely bring that to that conference, and your teacher would be happy to share some different ideas or strategies that they can use. If you have any questions on the graphs themselves, you want to bring that to your parent-teacher conference, go for it. You can also reach out to either myself or Jennifer Schneider, our instructional coach. Hello there, you thought I was done, but I have one more thing I almost forgot to go back over again. If you remember from the beginning of the year, I explained that South Elementary is a title school. Being a title school, that means we get some money from the federal government. It's one of the largest federally funded education programs in the nation. And so we have a couple of things that we do and have to kind of cover being a title school. One of them is that we, at the very beginning of the year, had you sign and kind of read through this title compact. And so one of the things that we have to do is kind of remind all of our stakeholders, our teachers, our parents, our students, that we did sign this compact and kind of what it means. So taking a look at some of this stuff here, just as a reminder for you, these were all the things that we all agreed that we were going to do and provide for our students. So we had a nice little teacher in school part here. We had the parent or caring adult part that was right here, and we had the student part that was right there. Those are all the things that we kind of promised each other that we would kind of stick through and make sure that we're holding up on our end, just as you're holding up on your end, and giving your child the best possible education that we can here at South Elementary. So with that little quick reminder about being a title school in our compact that we signed, I will now for sure let you go and wish you a very happy rest of your day, and look forward to seeing all of you tomorrow and the next night at parent-teacher conferences. Thank you.